In this video, we're going to learn how to replace a carburetor on a Stihl string trimmer. Welcome everyone. It's a beautiful day here in Wisconsin. It's only 9 o'clock in the morning. Already it's feeling a little warm and a little humid. So later today I'm going to be visiting one of Milwaukee's many breweries. You can see that in another video. Today we're going to learn how to change a carburetor in a Stihl trimmer. Now this is the Stihl, let me show it to you. Right here, it's the FS45, but they're all basically the same. Now the first thing that you see here is I have a pretty high level of gasoline in there. I am going to drain some of that gas out, because if I don't, as soon as I take these fuel lines off, gas is going to squirt everywhere. I don't want that to happen. Now let me show you why I made the decision to change out this carburetor. After a winter of being stored, I went to start this up, put fresh fuel in, and look at this. I went to prime it. I pushed that primer bulb and it was all dried out and brittle, and it actually cracked. This won't work without a primer bulb. So I thought, well, if I'm going to replace that, I'm just going to replace the carburetor, because there are other things that are probably going bad, getting brittle, and it's so cheap. I think I paid about $16, $17 for the whole kit I'm about to show you. And I'll leave the link for this kit down below in case you want to order one yourself. This is what it looked like when it came from Amazon. You can see here it says HIPAA S97 carburetor for trimmer weed eater. These had really good reviews, and let's open it up and show you what is inside. So besides the carburetor itself, which is all ready to go, you can see it does have the primer bulb in place. You're going to get a new fuel line. This is probably in pretty bad shape on the existing one. It's probably brittle and dried out, so it's good to have a new one. We get 2 new fuel filters. Those are probably all clogged up and dirty. Fresh bulbs, primer bulbs, in case I ever want to replace those. And we get gaskets, an air filter, and a new spark plug. All of that for only about $17. Really a good deal. If you're going to go through the trouble of replacing anything, you might as well replace it all, because you're going to see this really is not that difficult. If I can do it, trust me, anybody can do this. So the first thing we want to do is get the old carburetor off of there. So you push in that lever, take off the cover, take this air filter out, and you can see that there are 2 threaded kind of screw ends there, and I believe we use an 8mm socket in order to get those off. Okay, this is actually a 5/16. I thought it'd be a metric, but it's 5/16. Then we take that off just like that. And now the carburetor will pull off. But before we do that, we have the gas lines down here. Let me get in a better view to show you that. Okay, these are the 2 gas lines. I'm just going to take a needle-nose pliers to kind of help me with that. They're on there pretty tight, actually. There we go. I might have to... I'm going to replace those anyways, so I'm not too concerned about it. But wow, they're on there tight. Okay. Now be careful. The throttle has to come off the throttle cable. Let me come back to the other side and show you what that looks like. So here's our throttle cable. If you push this down, that throttle cable will probably pop out of there. If it doesn't, I'm just going to guide it. There we go. And that'll come right off. I was just lifting that up. The throttle cable goes through that slot, so I just pushed that up. That loosened the throttle enough that we could pull it right out of that slot. So that's what I was doing. Next we'll take that gasket off. And we're pretty much where we want to be right now. Now we're going to take that fuel line out. I was pretty sloppy with that, but I didn't care that much because I do have a replacement right here. So to get that out, I'm just going to take a screwdriver and I'm going to pry it up out of there. And you'll see on the end of this is our fuel filter. There's where the fuel filter is. So we're going to clean this up a little bit, wipe down the area around there. I don't want to put any dirt back in, and we'll replace this fuel line and the fuel filter. So here's a new fuel line. I'm going to put the new fuel filter on there. Put that on nice and tight. Make sure it doesn't come loose on me. When I put this back in, that ridge right there is going to have to seat on that plastic hole. So we want this bottom ring to go inside and the top ring to rest on top. And I'm going to place that in so the longer fuel line is to the back. And once again, a small screwdriver might help just to push that in there. Get the back in first, and the front will slide in. There we go. Now it's time to put the new carburetor on. Let's start with the fresh gasket. Carburetor fits in, and now we're going to have to put that cable back on and the fuel lines back on. So we'll go for the cable first because that might be trickiest. You have to make sure, here, let me show you. There is a hole on the bottom. See that? We have to make sure that's on the bottom because that's what's going to lock that throttle cable in place. There we go. That took me about 30 seconds. I don't know if I'll put the whole thing on the video. Now I have to put these fuel lines on. These holes are really small, so it might be a little tricky. But that's what I'm going to do next. Alright, so it's good and tight. So that is the first one. And the second one I'm going to wrap around it. I don't want those things to get tangled up. Put that right on there. Very flexible. I'll put that on like that. And now all we have to do is put that air cleaner back in place. It goes on like that. If I can get those screws started, sometimes that's the hardest, or the nuts rather. Sometimes it's the hardest part, getting those nuts threaded on. And let's put a fresh filter in there. And then we put the cover back on. Next thing we're going to do is replace that spark plug. Okay, we got the plug out. Yeah, that's seen some life, hasn't it? Okay, put the fresh one in there. And generally all we need to do is make it snug. I'm going to put it in there finger tight and give it about a half a turn to tighten it down. There we go. Now this socket is deep enough, but you have to be careful because if you try to use a regular socket, you could damage that spark plug. Now all we have to do is clip that back on and you'll feel that connect and snap back into place. Anyone that works on small engines can tell you that one of the major reasons that people have trouble starting their small engine equipment is because of bad fuel. They put bad fuel in the engine, they leave it over the winter, they have bad fuel to start with. So what I'm going to do now is go and get some fresh premium fuel, have the right fuel oil mixture, and we'll be right back. And by the way, they do sell some really fancy schmancy fuels for these engines. Very expensive, probably really good. They say they can stay in the engine for up to 2 years, but I'm just going to use premium gas and make sure I have fresh fuel in the engine at all times. So I spent a little time monkeying with the rich lean mixture and resetting the idle. A little more than I wanted to put on this video. Maybe we'll save that for another one. But basically, as I said, to get started, screw them all the way in. Back them off about 1.5 turns, and that'll be a good starting point. And then as you are running it and you're pressing the throttle and letting go of the throttle, you can make those adjustments. But that's how you change out a carburetor. If you don't want to change a whole carburetor, you can do some of the other things that we talked about. Put in a new fuel filter, new air filter, new spark plug. Pretty easy job, all told. I'll bet that doesn't take more than 20 minutes to a half hour. So I hope you enjoyed this video, found something useful. As always, I encourage you to like and share the videos. Leave your comments down below. If you haven't already, please subscribe by clicking my face in the corner. And don't forget to ring that bell icon up above. That way you'll know when I post new videos. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'm Mark. This is the Average Me Channel.